And then moving forward, we've got the snare drum, which I'll solo both of the top and the bottom. We'll start with the inserts off. And as you can see, we've got a gate on the Softube Console 1. There's an API Vision EQ with a boost 9 dB at 180, 6 dB at 5K, and 12 dB at 5K. So quite a lot of top and bottom being added to the snare drum. And then a UAD API channel strip compressor, also with some drive on. Then it goes into a FabFilter Pro Q2 with some reduction EQ. Only small stuff, and then there's a trim plugin on the end which I used to just get the snare drum in a better place level wise. As you can see with the faders, all of my faders are at 0, and there's a reason for that. Is because not that it just looks prettier, but it helps the mind to be able to get a good balance, because if you've got a snare drum that's down there, when you make small moves it looks drastic in comparison to everything else. So I tend to try and get everything balanced at 0, and then any automation rides are going to be very, very small and it looks a little bit more refined. So let's solo the snare drum. There's a little trim plugin on the snare drum bottom just to get a little bit more gain off. But we'll start with the plugins off, so you can have a listen to the snare drum on its own, then we'll go through the plugins. So hopefully you could hear then I was turning the EQs on and off, the compressors on and off, the gates on and off, and I bypassed the fab filters. Again, what this is doing on its own is relevant, but it's not as relevant as what it's doing in the whole mix of the drums. It might give you an idea of what a snare drum would sound like on its own. To my ears, that sounds quite brittle and maybe a little bit too compressed, but in the overall mix of the drums, it's working. So never be too conscious of getting the best drum sound you can possibly get on an individual drum. I'm sure you've seen many tutorials explaining this, but it's very easy to go in and get the best snare sound in the world and then bring up the overheads and it's totally out of phase. Hopefully that gives you an idea of the sound of the snare, but the main purpose of this is to show you that there's a template here that you can use that is a great starting point with all of the drums in phase. Is pretty much ready to go. So as you can see, that snare drum is being sent to the drum parallel, the kick and snare parallel, drum distortion, and all of the reverbs.